You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Lynn Gaspaire today. He's an individual that I found from the great book Sasquatch Face to Face by Tom Cantrell. Lots of great stories in there. And thankfully, he was like, yes, I'll definitely come on. We can chat about what I've experienced. So, Lynn, it's great to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be on the show, and it's all part of my research to help people understand Bigfoot. I am in the book Sasquatch Face to Face. I did write chapter 9.
Absolutely, and we were having quite the conversation before we started recording. We were talking about, you're involved with all sorts of stuff. You talk to a lot of really cool people, and it's everyone from, well, do you mind me saying what kind of people you talk to?
That's fine.
All right. You talk to everyone from Dr. Meldrum to Bob Gimlin, and you just have some really interesting conversations with some really interesting people. And I'm excited to talk to you. So, Lynn, take me back right to where this started for you, back to, it sounds like age 6.
All right, this is a true story. It happened in 1959 at Ocean Shores, Washington, which is a vacation area where people go to dig clams. And the families were there and were digging clams, and got their limits, and came back to the duplex to clean clams. And being the littlest guy there, I got to go out back, and I was looking for something to do. And behind the duplex was this big blackberry patch running from right to left. It was about 20 foot long and about 7-8 foot high, and it was just loaded with blackberries. So being a 6-year-old who liked blackberries, I decided I was going to pick blackberries. And by the shed behind the duplex, there was 3 1-gallon white plastic buckets. I got them, and I went over to the blackberries bushes, and I started picking the low-hanging clusters of blackberries. And while I was picking the blackberries, I would every now and then hear like something pull on a vine, or I'd see a vine snatch, move, and I hear like a sucking, like somebody was slurping berries or something off the vine. And I would look around, and I didn't see anybody or anything, so I went back to picking the blackberries and filling the buckets, and there'd be a pull on the bush, or a vine would push and some breaking, and I'd hear that sucking sound, and I'd look again, nothing. So I decided to work higher on the patch, so I went over to the shed, which was about 10 feet away from the patch, and I got this old-fashioned wooden step ladder, and I came over and I put it up next to the blackberry patch. I had about a bucket and a half of berries left to do, and as I started picking the berries, I'd climb up the stepladder. And there would be the pull on the bush again and the noise, and I'd look and I'd see nothing. And I got about halfway up, and as I'm picking blackberries, right up in front of me comes this black hand. It's a right hand. It's covered with hair, clear down to the fingernails. It's got fingernails. It has an opposing thumb. It looks like a human hand, but only bigger, and it's covered with fine black hair. It pulls berries over to the side. I'm not up high enough where I can look over the patch yet. And so I look at this, and I'm going, what was that? Is that a person or something? And so I pick some more, and I reach over to pull a cluster to me, and this hand comes up again. It's a right hand. It's covered with hair from the fingernails, clear down the wrist, and the portion of the arm that I can see. And this hair is fine black hair. It's about an inch or so long, and it pulls the berries over, and I'm picking berries, and I keep thinking to myself, is this some person or something? Because I've seen the hand look like a human hand, only bigger. And so I'm back to picking the berries, and the hand comes up again, and it gets a hold of a cluster of berries right next to me. So I reach over with my left hand, and I touch the index finger and the forefinger on the right hand, and it pulls back. And I go, oh, that's interesting. And so I go to start picking, and the hand comes back real slow. And so I reach over, and again, the hair is soft, and the hand doesn't pull away. It stays there for a little bit, and then we go back to picking the berries. And I reach up to my left to get a higher cluster of berries. Up comes the right arm, and it's covered from hair as far as I can see, top and bottom. It grabs the vine, and it comes to berry. It pulls it down, and I go, aha, that's the motion and the sound that I was hearing. Whatever this is on the other side of the bush is doing it. And so I pick more berries, and I reach up to get clumps of berries, which is almost in the area where the hand comes up, and this time it touches my hand. Its fingers are across my index finger and forefinger on my left hand, and it pulls the berries down to a board about in front of me, and I'm just looking at this like, what is this? So I pick some berries off with my right hand. It pulls them over. Meanwhile, the left arm comes up on the other side of the bush and pulls down more berries. And this is what we're doing. So we keep doing this. And I'm picking berries, and I come up a couple more higher. I fill up the second, but I'm working on the third bucket. Well, now I'm up where I'm about the third, fourth rung on the ladder. I can see over it, and as I'm picking berries, the hand comes up and gets a hold of some berries right straight in front of me, and I take my right hand and I just put it down right on the hand, and it doesn't move back. And it pulls it back, and I reach over to get another clump of berries with my right hand. Up comes the left arm. It's covered from hair from hand to shoulder, top and bottom. The hair between an inch to 2 inches long, black. The skin on the palm of the hand is lighter colored. The nails are dark, human-looking nails, opposing thumb. And it gets a hold of my hand as it comes down. And so we're doing this back and forth. So I finally get up next to the top rung, and I reach up to get one up higher up. Up comes the arm again, and it pulls it down. It stops almost right in front of my face. I pick some berries. It ticks some berries, and I hear the slurping noise again. So I go, So this time I come up, and I'm getting ready to do it, and I just, for some reason, I heard like a noise, like a grunt or something, and I look down to my left on the opposite side of the bush, maybe 18 inches, 24 inches away. There's the face. It has a tan-colored forehead that slopes back. The head on top is covered with black hair, It's wider at the back than it is at the front. It goes up, but it doesn't have a sagittal crest. I can see ears that are about twice the size of a average human. The ears are black colored with fine, maybe quarter-inch long hair on it, and I look right into the face. It has brown eyes, black pupils. There's whites in the eye. It has a flat Nubian-style nose with almond-shaped nostrils. The skin is a dark tan color. It's got like a full beard, an inch long hair on its face. It has the distance between the bottom of the nose and the lip is longer than an average adult. And it has no visible neck, and I'm looking down. It has no clothes on. As far as I can see down, it is covered in hair. And I'm looking at this, and I'm trying to, as a 6-year-old, figure out what this is. My first thought was this is an Afro-American kid. Why would an Afro-American child or teenager be out picking blackberries nude, all hair covered? So I know it wasn't that. And it didn't have a snout. It had a face. It had a nose, chin, ears, no visible neck, all covered in black hair. So I'm looking at it, and being a 6-year-old, I'm curious. I'm not afraid of it. And I speak to it, and I say, "Are you picking blackberries too? The biggest and the juiciest ones and the sweetest ones are up high." He kind of ticks its head at me. And as I reach up to get some blackberries, it reaches up, it takes a hold of the vine and my hand, and it brings it down in front of me. It tries it towards me, and I take some. It takes some, and I'm looking at this, and I talk to it again, and I go, "Can you hear me? Can you talk?" Because I'm trying to be its friend. I'm trying to make friends with it. It doesn't answer anything, and I started to feel just super sad because it doesn't talk. And I just, for some reason, reached up and I touched my right ear with my right pointing finger, and I go, "Can you hear?" It reaches up with its left hand, and it touches its left ear. And I'm going, is it mimicking me? I'm thinking this to myself, or is it telling me that it can hear? And I go up and I touch my ear again. "Can you hear me?" It does the exact same thing back. So I'm thinking as a 6-year-old, it can hear me. Then I felt super sad. And I'm looking at it in its face, and I say, "How sad. You can hear, but you can't talk," because I thought it couldn't speak. It kind of grunts, and it looks at me, and just being a 6-year-old, right from the heart, I say, "Do you need a friend? Can I be your friend?" I just ask it to be, I can be its friend. It takes with its left hand, it gets a hold of a cluster of blackberries, like it hands somebody over, and it hands the blackberries to me. I take it with my right hand, and it puts its left hand kind of like at the waist level, out, palm up to the left side of me. I take the blackberries, I pick some, and then I take a clump of blackberries in the exact manner that it handed to me. I hand it back to it, and it takes it with its left hand, and I put my left hand down flat in the palm of its hand. We're holding hands. I'm on the ladder. It's on the other side of the back of the fish. It reaches out, and we put it. At that moment, I just felt this connection. Like we just became friends. And later on through research, I learned that blackberries, or any type of berries, is a significant part of their survival. So from a Bigfoot, a gift of blackberries or berries to you, that's a pretty significant gift of friendship. And I learned that from discussions with Tom Cantrell. So this is what it did, and we went on picking berries and touching hands, hold hands, back and forth. I would talk to it. I never thought to walk around the patch. And we kept doing this. We were friends, as far as I could see, being a 6-year-old. I just made friends with whatever this was. It wasn't an Afro-American kid. It was a big, hair-covered animal creature that was about 6 foot 6, covered with hair, that picked blackberries with me. The people that were in the opposite end of the duplex had a lab, and the lab come out, fired out, running. It started barking and growling. It could smell the Bigfoot, is all that I could figure. And the Bigfoot nip went at it, growling, shaking the bushes, and when it came out, I turned to the left, and the ladder kicked out for me, and I hit the ground with a thump on my bottom. The ladder went down. One of my last bucket of bear, it landed between the ladder legs on the ground, and I'm on the ground, and the lab is just, it's trying to, I guess, protect me, and the Bigfoot's trying to protect me, and they're going at it back and forth. Well, it comes out from behind the patch, going on the trail to go into the woods, and it has to pass under a Douglas fir, and there's a dead branch about 4 inches thick that sticks out, and it comes out, reaches up with its right hand, grabs that branch, just snaps it down, breaks it off, hits the other end on the ground, and it's got like a 3.5, 4 foot club, and it turns from its waist, it puts its left hand out, and it's facing the dog, and they're at each other. No doubt in my mind that this, whatever it was fixing to whop this dog. And people are starting to yell and scream and come out, and I'm still sitting on the ground looking right at it, and it goes down the path, and about 10, 15 feet down the path, there's a little swale, there's a dead stump and a blow-down tree, and it goes down behind into the little swale there, a hole there, and behind the stump, and it just drops down. And I'm sitting on the ground, I can look, and it's looking in my direction, and the people come out, and they're calling the dog off. The dog didn't go after it. It came back towards my direction, and my mom came out, and my grandmother came out, and they're going, "What's going on here?" And the owner says, "Well, the Labrador went after a bear or something that was near your child." Now we got to stop right here and reflect back. 2 things. One, who picks blackberries in the blackberry patch barefoot? And what bear runs on 2 feet, can reach up with the right hand, 4 fingers, a palm, and opposing thumb, and break off a branch, and break it off on the ground, and turn while standing on 2 feet and look at the dog and have that club held about shoulder height?
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's not a bear. So I get escorted off into the duplex, and they pick up 2 of my buckets of berries, and everybody starts asking me questions about what I saw, what happened, and that scared me more than what happened outside, because these are adults, and and I don't know truly how to explain them. And a park warden or a sheriff or something shows up, to remember the green uniform, and they're describing this, and my grandfather comes over, and he asks me, he says, "Describe to me what it looks like." And I was describing it to him, and I said it had a face covered in hair, like a teenager with a beard. And one of the adults, maybe the warden, said, "Does he know the difference between what a bear is?" And my grandpa says, "Oh yes, he knows what a bear is, no problem." And I did at that age. And so my grandfather is asking me to describe it, and he says, "Did it have a muzzle? Did it have a nose?" I said, "It had a nose," and I reached up and touched my grandfather's nose. and a nose like this. And he says that, I said, and he asked me more. I said, it had ears on the side, it's not on top. And I said, it had a chin. I touched my grandfather's chin. And one of the adults says, he's describing a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch. And that's what I really connected, that that's what I saw, because I knew at that age what a bear looked like. And this was not a bear. So I asked him, well, did you bring my berries in? And I said, there's 3 buckets. They said, well, we brought 2 in. And my grandfather says, Patty, you guys, and Valerie, this is my grandfather, go out and get his other bucket. My 2 uncles went outside. They walked around the back side of the patch, and they found 13.5, 14-inch quadruple E barefoot footprints with a little like a dirt in the track going down the path to where I said it stepped off behind the stuff. And then they found tracks of it coming back. So they walked back, and I had told them that the ladder had landed on its side, the legs apart, and the other bucket of berries was between the legs. When they got there, the bucket was picked up, and just about all the berries were put back in the bucket, and the ladder was put together and laid next to the bush. And they had followed the tracks back from where it went off up to the bucket, to where the bucket of berries were. What would a friend do? It came back. And that was what started out for me. And I truly believe that because of that incident and the physical contact with that Bigfoot led to many of the other encounters that I had with Bigfoot from then until throughout my life. I believe is you make friends with them, they know you. From my observations, if one knows you, I would put forth that the whole Bigfoot family, no matter where they're at or where they're at through the state, they'll recognize you.
I would agree, and I think that goes both ways too. If you're recognized as someone who has bad intentions or is not a friend, that is going to go across the family, as it were.
Yes, that does. I've listened to a lot of people in Washington State say, well, I've been out looking for 40 years. I've never seen Bigfoot. And I go, well, what's your intentions? What are you doing? We're trying to follow them. I said, if you're doing things, with certain expectations, intentions, they're going to respond to that. Without a doubt, a Bigfoot can read your facial expressions. It can read your body language, and it can understand your voice inflection. And I had never at any time felt threatened by that Bigfoot. It kind of felt like I had a big friend that was going to watch out for me and see that I wasn't going to get hurt while we were picking blackberries. It was curious. It definitely had intelligence. It definitely had patience, because, what teenager would put up with a 6-year-old?
Oh, absolutely. It's probably one of the best accounts I've heard of them in regards to quick intelligence. It's just incredible how many points in that account it shows its quick intelligence.
Yes.
I'm curious, there are points when you actually had physical contact with the Bigfoot. Do you remember did it have a smooth skin, or do you remember anything about how that felt?
It felt soft. Its hair felt very soft. Of course, this was a juvenile. The skin was soft. It's definitely very much aware of its strength, because it never grabbed me. It would touch and hold, but it was not hard. It was very light and very gentle. And if I moved to move my hand away, it would let go. Of course, it could probably see me more than I could see it, because I still had some of the screening from the top of the berry patch, where it, standing up, could look up and see me more clearly.
Right. Wow.
Until I'd look down.
After you had this encounter, did it put you down a path right away for trying to find them again or having interactions, or was there a time period before you had your next interaction?
I was always curious about my friend. And when we would go back there, if we went back to that same spot, I would look for it, especially around the blackberry patches. My next encounter when I saw Bigfoot was about 6 years later, 10 years later, 1969, at Killen Creek, Mount Adams. And we were camping there and we'd been fishing, and the older people, the family members, had decided to take a nap, and there was a huckleberry patch down the road from where we were camped. So I went to my mom and I asked her for her Tupperware bowl. I was going to go down to the huckleberry patch and pick huckleberries. So I did that, and I got the bowl from my mom, and I up the road maybe 7,500 yards, and there was a big sloping downhill that was covered. It was a bit logged off area. It was had blackberry, huckleberries in it, and ferns and stuff all the way down to like 150 yards to the wood line, and then over maybe 75 to the opposite wood line. And as I stepped off the road to the edge of the patch where the huckleberries were, I heard two high-pitched, two-tone, like people say a mechanic, bird whistle. I can't whistle with a hoop, but like, and I just looked, and I look around, and I don't see nothing, and I take a step going into the patch, and the huckleberry bushes and the grass, like something's walking, going straight away from me down the hill. So my thought is maybe I walked up on a deer or something. And I looked at the huckleberries near me, bushes, and here's something what people miss. All of the branches on top where the berries would be were missing. Like they were neatly clipped off or broken off. And I'm looking at this, and doesn't look right. And I hear the whistle again from down at the bottom of the hill, and I look in that direction, and about 50 feet in front of me, the grass goes open and close again, but this is going left to right on the brow of like a little rolling hills as it goes down, and it's motioning, and it disappears behind a stump with rotten stumps. It's got huckleberries and stuff going on, and I look at that, and I go, maybe I stepped on a deer. So I went a little bit further into the patch to look for huckleberries that I could pick, and I noticed at the bushes where there were not the twigs and stuff that had the berries on it, next to it there was like a pile and a scattering of twigs, all about the same size, maybe a berry on it or maybe a leaf on it. Later, like in 1972, I actually got to observe a female Bigfoot picking huckleberries and how she would break them off and pull them off with her lips and then just drop the twigs. I was able to put that together. And so I kept picking the blackberries, and every now and then I'd see a motion in the grass, and I didn't think nothing of it. The only thing I could smell was dirt, grass, and ripe huckleberries. And I looked at my bucket, and I wasn't getting very good at picking huckleberries. So I decided I was going to make like a cloth or a basket or something out of my T-shirt. So I pulled off my sweatshirt, and I laid it up on the bushes, took my T-shirt off, tied it in a knot so there was no holes at the arms or sleeves, and had like a basket. And as I went to put my shirt back on, I'm looking through it, and the brush right in front of me moves. And I look at it, and I get the glimpse of the right side of like a head, a shoulder, a fat belly, and a hip going through the brush. And man, I come up and just hold dead still because black shiny hair, huckleberry patch. The first thing that comes to my mind is bear. I'm like 9, 10 years old, and I go, hold still. So I hold still, and I don't smell a bear. I don't hear a bear. I don't see it, and I wait, and everything's quiet. Okay, nothing there. So I go over to the bushes, and I put my little T-shirt basket underneath the bush, and I shake and I start getting huckleberries, and I would move along, and every now and then, out of the side of my eye, I'd see that motion through the brush. I'd catch a glimpse of black hair, a body part, but it was kind of paralleling me and going towards the opposite side of the woods. See nothing, smell nothing. Okay. So I'm doing this, and I'm picking the black huckleberries and filling up my bowl, and I'm looking down the path in front of me, and the path goes over a little hill and into the woods, and I can see under the big evergreen trees, and right at the edge of the wood, there's like 5 small huckleberries, but I can see the path between them going into the woods. So I get just about 20 feet from that spot, and I'm filling up my bowl, and there's the motion from my left side. The bushes are open and closing, and this time I can see the form, and it's black. It's on all fours. I can't make out a distinguishable head, but I can see it's got a head. I get part of it right ear, the right side of it. It's coming from left to right, and it's going towards the woods. So I just hold still, and I was like squatted down, and I changed to a kneeling position, and I check my bowl and the glass in it, and I look up, looking down this path that goes under the trees, and I can't see the path underneath the tree. I go, that's odd, because I previously could see underneath it. And about this time, this black form rocks back into a squatting position, and I just freeze, and I'm looking right at it, and it's looking at me, and I'm kneeling down, and I left foot down, right knee down, and I look right at it, maybe 20 paces away, and it's looking at me, and I kind of straighten up a little bit, and it, at the edge of these 5 blue paths, it rocks up into a squatting position. I can make out the arms, the belly, and the head, and it's got the wider in the back, ears on the side, flat nose, is covered in black, and I'm looking at that, and my mind's saying, you've seen that before. And I look at it, and I know it's not a bear, and my mind is racing back. I keep going back to when I was younger. I've seen this before. I've seen this before. And so I stand up, and I take a step to the right. The road's up to my right. I'm going to go up, and I take a step to my right, and it stands up. It's standing there on 2 feet. It's more of a left profile to me at this time, and it takes a step forward and stands still, and it turns from the waist, and it's looking right at me. The huckleberry bushes are taller where it's at, and it comes up to about its hip. I can see it from the left side of its head all the way down to its arm, its thing, and I'm looking at it. I see the head. It's got an ear on the left side. It's got a protruding like lantern jaw, and it's got eyes that can shine. It's got no visible neck. I see the shoulder. I can see its chest move. It's breathing. I can see its arm and its wrist, and its hand is down on the bush, and I'm looking at this, and I'm going, my mind and subconscious telling me, you've seen this before. And so I'm watching it, and it's breathing, and I start looking down the body, and I hope this is G-rated enough. I see nipples and breasts and a big fat round belly, and instantly I feel myself turn red, and I look down. I break contact with it because here I am. I'm 10 years old, so that was kind of an awkward, embarrassing moment. And finally, I got enough courage to look up, and I look up at it, and it's standing there, turned a little bit more towards me, and it's smiling. And it kind of has an expression on its face like a mom or a woman would get, when a little child's by and got surprised or embarrassed by their condition. And I'm going, this is something different. This isn't, a person. And so as I watch, and I'm watching it, it's standing there watching me, and I'm standing there watching it, and I have the bowl of berries in my right hand. I have a shirt full of berries in my left. So I take the sack is, and I take that sack over the bowl and put the berries in it, holding the bottom of the bowl with my right hand, and I smooth it over with my left hand, and I look over at it, and it's smiling at me. It puts its hand on the bottom of its belly, its right hand, and it takes its left hand, and the same motion I did over the top of the bit, it rubs on its belly, and then it dawning on me, this is some type of a pregnant, something that looks like a person. And I just looking at it, and it just smiles at you, almost like how a beaming first-time pregnant woman would do. And so I go, well, maybe I should leave. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what's it do? I never thought, that didn't occur to me that maybe because it was pregnant, it might have been hungry, and maybe it wanted to share some of the huckleberries with me, which I think I could have done. And so I start walking away on the edge of the road, and it walks along, and it's watching me. And I get to one spot, and it looks at me, and it turns to the right and goes down over the hill. And as I walk to the edge of the road, it pops into my head the blackberry patch when I was 6 years old. And I'm going, okay, this is a different Bigfoot. And obviously it's a pregnant female Bigfoot. And I was thinking, what was going on? And then later, through the years that I reminisced on this, it became very simple. Or maybe it was something that the Bigfoot was allowing me to finally put together. What would a first-time pregnant mom or Bigfoot do? They would watch other children. And I believe, because I was a child and she was an expectant mom, that she was watching me. And so that's what it was for me on that day with that Bigfoot. That was at Mount Adams, Killen Creek.
That's incredible. Do you remember anything about the details of the teeth when it smiled at you?
Yes. Their teeth are like ours. They are only bigger. They do not have canines like gorillas or chimpanzees do. They don't. Their teeth are like ours, only bigger. I learned in 1972 where I got to sit in the huckleberry patch with a family of Bigfoot next to a mom who was like 8 feet away from me. She opened her mouth and yawned, and then I could count her teeth and see her teeth. They do not have canine teeth like we would perceive canine teeth for eye teeth, like gorillas and long fat. No, their teeth are like ours. They're just thicker and bigger.
Wow.
The Mitch Townsend in his book describes the teeth of a Bigfoot from bite marks, and what he is describing in his book is exactly what I saw.
That is very interesting. That's a name that comes up every once in a while.
Yes.
It's Mitch Townsend.
Take it to the bank when he puts in that book about their teeth structure.
Okay.
And like I said, I have seen their mouth up close and how he described them, and from the bite marks of their teeth, my observations to what he wrote is a match.
Seeing something at age 6 is definitely different than seeing something at age 19.
9.
Age 9.
Mm-hmm.
Did that sighting at a little older, did that affect you in a different way than your initial sighting, or did you kind of have the same reaction after?
I felt a confirmation within myself that this was the same animal, only a female, as to what I saw when I was younger. And I had always wanted to see them again because this to me was a friend. Okay, I know that this wasn't the same one, but it was the same being, creature, animal, relic hominid that I'd seen before.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely interesting. It sounds like, so that was 1969, and just a few years after that, then you had an even more close interaction. That was let's see, that was okay in '69. The day that Armstrong landed on the moon. That I was up at the same spot, only I was on the other side of the creek. It's Killen Creek, and I was fishing. And I'm fishing, and there were birds and stuff. And all of a sudden, it went quiet. And I hear that whistle again. But I'm kind of facing the creek. Off to my right, about 30 feet, is this big, dead fir snag, about 4 foot across. And I never thought to look in that direction. And I look around, and I don't see anything. So I go back to fishing. I catch a fish, I throw it on the bank, and back to fishing. And I hear like a rock on wood, whack, whack. And I turn and I look, and I don't see anything. And again, I don't pay attention to the snag. And I look and I look and I look, and I don't see anything. So I go back to fishing, and all of a sudden, dirt, pine cones, and rock go across the ground in front of me and next to my foot. So I go, okay, who's throwing stuff at me? And I turn a little bit to the right, and I look at the stump, that snag around it. Look, I don't see nothing. And I go, this is, back to fishing. And I'm back to fishing, and I get pelted again with pebbles, rocks, and dirt. At this time, it goes across my foot. And I go, somebody's playing with me or trying to get my attention, so I turn even more to the right. So the creek is on my left side, Killen Creek. I'm facing right. It's a clear-cut area. It's got huckleberries, and there's that big stump again on my right, and I look, and I don't see nothing. So I go back to fishing, and about this time, out of my right side, I see motion. And I look up, and there's this soccer-sized rock flying through the air, and it hits in the water in front of me. And I go, they threw something at me, or something threw something. So I turn to the right, and for some reason, my attention focused on the big snag, and I see the left arm come back. And I go, aha. So I turn and look, facing directly at the snag. And I see this head and body lean out from the left side, from towards me on this big dead snag. And I'm looking at that, and I go, that's big. And it takes a side step, and it puts both its hands up on this
snag, and it's kind of like a bear would sidewalk around the snag. And I'm looking at this, and I go, "You don't fool me. You're not a bear. There's no snout. There's no ears on top of the head." Now, if you remember the old-time wrestler Haystack Calhoun, he was 6'4" and 650 pounds. This critter is 3 foot bigger and's got him by 300 pounds. So this is big, and being at that time a little older, I turn and look at it, and the first thought that comes to my mind is, who is this throwing rocks at me? And then it dawns on me, that's not clothes, that's hair. It's brown, it's black, it's got some lighter streakings on the torso. It's a male, I can see that. It's not clothes. And this thing, like I said, is about 9 foot tall, a good 900 pounds. And it's just standing there looking at me. And I'm standing looking at it. And it sways a little bit, and it goes, and I go back at it. And I stand up and look at it. And it has its right hand up on the dead snag, and it brings its left arm over and crosses over in front and puts it on its left arm, and it's standing there looking at me. And I'm watching it, and I got a pretty good idea what it is. It's a male Bigfoot. And like, what's he doing there? And I could see the path. The only thing I can figure is it was coming down that path to maybe get a drink of water, and I was sitting there in front of it. But it was curious as to what I was and what I was doing. I was fishing. So I watch it, and eventually it kind of rocks a little bit. Then from the waist, it turns to its left, and then the body turns around, and it starts walking away from me. So I go, I'm going to see this. I start walking behind it. I'm not afraid of, I got an idea. I'm pretty sure what it is. I just walk behind it. And as I walk behind it, I get about to the snag, and it stops, and it turns and looks to its left and looks back at me. I stop, just stand right still. I don't tell me, don't follow it. I'm watching it as it walks away. I can see the muscles in its back move. I can see the muscles in its legs move. I can see the bottom of its foot. As it comes up, it comes down on the ground, how the weight transfers. I'm not close to it. I'm maybe 35 feet behind it, walking a little bit behind it, and I get to where the snag is, and I look down, and I can see on the ground where it pulled the big rock out of the ground and threw it at me into the creek. And there on the ground in the path is about an 18 to 19 inch track. About 6 feet in front of it is another going straight to that creature. So I knew this was a male Bigfoot, and it was on the same day that Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. I saw Mr. Bigfoot up close and personal. And again, I believe I saw it not by so much by coincidence, but because I had seen and interacted with them before. It could have been a coincidence, or we just happened to be at the same place at the same time, but I never felt threatened. I felt that the whistle and the rock clock and even the throwing the stuff at my foot and this big rock in the creek, it was trying to get my attention. It was trying to get me to look at it. I don't think it was trying to scare me away. It made no aggressive motion. It was more curious, like, I'm here. Do you see me? But then it turned and walked away. I guess I'd occupied its time span enough.
And that was July 21st, 69?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think you returned the same noise it made to you?
Through the years that I've been around him, I've learned that Bigfoot makes certain vocalizations.
Right.
They also make certain noises with rocks and sticks. Most people that are around Bigfoot don't put two and two together or haven't heard him make rock clacks, wood knocks or vocalizations, whistles. So they don't know what it is. I've heard it before. I've seen them do it. So I know in my mind is that, yes, I can recognize it. This is what that is. And over the years, I've learned to look and listen for that. I've had them walk alongside of me through the woods, juveniles and adults. And when I'm aware that there's ones there, it's like I can feel them. They're there. I hear them there by the sounds that they make, by the sounds of their foot makes when they're walking. People that say you can't tell the difference between a deer walking and a Bigfoot, that's utter nonsense. You sure can. A hard cloven hoof makes a different sound when it hits the ground as compared to that big flappy foot of a Bigfoot. And people say, well, we don't see the tracks. You got to understand the area of that foot can displace 750 pounds of weight per square inch. So you got a 15-inch track, which is basically a 8-foot tall Bigfoot that's 650 pounds. Unless there's snow or soft ground, you're not going to see complete tracks because that foot can displace that weight on the ground. It's the makeup of the soil that they're walking on. I've found tracks that were quite clear. I have found tracks on hard baked clay that you might find a toe print, but if you look in the general direction, you'll pick up scuff marks. And it's because of that big foot that you don't see a lot of tracks because it can displace that body weight. You see that there's that progression.
Right.
Still as a young, and I still believe it's because of meeting that one when I was 6, that they were there, and maybe this Bigfoot was checking up on me like I was a friend. I believe the family, the families of Bigfoot, if they see one person, it appears that they all seem to recognize that person. They choose that person to befriend. And through research and reading a lot of reports and other people's observations, I believe that is true, that they'll check up on a friend, see how you're growing, what you're doing. That's my belief.
That's really interesting. Was then the next interaction you had with the family?
This was in 1972. This one was verified by the BFRO because another people that were there at that day saw 2 of the 4 that I saw. We had went up to Lake Cushman, and again, this was in July, the beginning of huckleberry season, and there were 4 of us, and we got to camp before late in the afternoon and made camp and fire, and it was getting on towards dark, and people were coming in and out of their camps, and we were listening, and it was dark, and we heard this high-pitched, like hysterical scream, like a woman screaming in hysteria, and like everybody just kind of freezes and looks up the hill like, what on earth is this? And it's followed by a more like baritone scream, wah, and then like a child screaming, and this is going on back and forth. And we're talking there in other camps, they go and they thought it was coyotes, and I go, no, that's too loud, and it doesn't have that yap yap that coyotes do when they're howling. And as other person, well, maybe it's a cougar screaming. I go, no, that's not a cougar screaming. It doesn't have that wah, a cat in it when the cougar screams. And I've been out in the woods a lot, and my dad had hunting dogs, and they'd hunt bear and cougar and with the dogs and out deer hunting, and I have heard bear noises, I've heard cougar noises, deer noises, elk noises, just about anything that's out there that makes a noise, I've heard it. So this is going on, and people start adding a little extra wood to their fire, and about this time, this woman comes in, and she says, she was walking up and she heard the screams. She says, I thought I saw a mountain gorilla cross the road. And I look at the people, look at myself, there's no mountain gorillas in Washington State around Lake Cushman. And if she's seeing something, maybe she saw a bear or something. And so we were all talking, and I told my friends, I said, I'm pretty good at hunting and tracking. I'm going to get up in the morning, and I'm going to walk up the old road and up towards where I heard that sound coming from. So it got first light, and I got dressed, and I was wearing khaki pants, a brown sweatshirt, and I had a hat on, and I had long brown hair. And so I start walking up. I cross this wooden bridge. This is a major campsite on Lake Cushman. And there's a little like bridge with a rusty gate. And I go across the bridge to the main road, and I start walking up the road. And I hadn't gone 50, 75 yards, and down in the gulch, which is thick with ferns and trees and huckleberries, I hear branches breaking, something's moving below me, and I hear it sounds like squirrel chatter. And I just stop because I'd never heard that before. What is that? And I'm on the high ground above it. They had no idea I was above them. And so I listen, and I hear it move, and I move with it going up the road. And I keep hearing the chatter, branches breaking and stuff like that. And I'm looking at my watch. It's maybe 5:30 in the morning. It's light, but I don't see anybody. And I keep walking, and it stops. It would break a branch. It would stop. And I'd walk. When it moved, I moved. When it stopped, I stopped. And I keep looking down, trying to look down through the trees and the brush, the ferns, the huckleberries to see what's below me. And as I'm coming up, I come to a tree, and I stop, and I look down, and I see two figures turn around and go down over the hill, and I'm looking at it. It's a blonde color phase. It's like a bouffant hairstyle from the back, and the other one's short, comes up to about its waist, and it goes back down in the gulch. And I go, wait a minute. I know I was the first one out of camp that morning. And, about a hairstyle, I says, what would a girl be doing out here, a mom and her daughter, bushwhacking at this time of the morning? It disappears. And pretty soon I hear the chatter again, and I hear the branches breaking. So I parallel them again. I got the high ground. I'm going to keep the high ground on them. And as they're coming up, almost to the crest of the road, I'm standing there by this tree, and I'm looking about 70, 50, 75 yards in front of me, and the shadow moves, and I just stand still and hug that tree. And it steps up to the edge of the road, and this thing is 9 foot tall. It's black. It is huge. And my mind goes, I know what that is. No doubt about it. That's a Bigfoot. It turns from the waist. It looks up the right towards me up the road. It turns to the left, looks down the road. It goes across that road in 2 steps, 10% grade, thick brush, and it goes up that like it's walking on flat ground. And I go, aha, I know what that is. I've seen that before. That's a Bigfoot. But then I don't know what's on the left side of me. So I walk a little bit further, and I hear it again. And I go, where's one way to find out? If a human steps on a branch or breaks a branch, they'll take that next step. So I reach up and grab this dead branch, and I go, snap. And I stand still. Everything below me stops. And I go, okay, if it's a person, they're going to take that next step. Nothing. I go, okay, this is not a person. A little while later, I hear it moving again, so I move, and I'm at there's a clearing. It's got stumps and huckleberries in it. It's got old growth huckleberries, and I step off the road, and I sit down on a stump behind like 3 little huckleberry bushes, and there's a little 4-inch stump next to my left foot, and I just sit down. And I'm eating huckleberries, just picking them. It's quiet. And to my left, about 8-10 feet away, this blonde brown arm comes out, grabs a hold of the huckleberries and pulls it back. And I go, I saw that arm. That arm was 4.5, 5 foot long, big long hand, blonde brown hair coloring on the hair, looked almost like the bleach color of an Alaskan grizzly, but there's no grizzly in this part of the country. And I'm watching it, and it pulls back, and I can see a form just inside the edge of the brush line. And I look, and I see like a tan hourglass looking in my direction. I just sit dead still and watch. I don't move anything but my eyes, and I'm watching it. And then pretty soon I pick up another, like a hourglass on its side mask, tan colored, and I pick up the eyes. They're in front of whatever that face is, and I'm looking, and I can make an outline of two figures just inside the brush. So I just sit still. And pretty soon the one that's a little further away, it turns to its left, and it's on off, and it kind of goes over the crest of a hill. And I pick up the back of a head. It's blonde colored. There's no neck. I can see ears on the side covered in fine hair. And it disappears over into the brush, and I go, what was that? About this time, from the left, about 8 feet away from me, this big animal comes out on all fours and sits down 8 to 10 feet in front of me. I am sitting just behind its right shoulder, like I said, 8 to 10 feet away, and my head comes up to the bottom of its armpit, and I'm 5'9", and this thing is sitting down, so it's, I figure, sitting down on the ground, this thing has to be 7.5 foot tall, and it's got that bouffant hairstyle. There's no visible neck. Its head is about 20 inches wide, 22 inches high. It's wider in the back than the front, and I can see its back, its shoulder blades, its side cheeks sitting with its feet and legs kind of pulled up to the right side. It's sitting on its left cheek, and I can see the feet and the legs, and I go, I'm going to just sit still and watch to see what this is. And so I just sit there, and I'm watching, and I say, I wonder if this is the two animals that I saw come up the road that was down in the bush that turned around and went back down. So as I'm watching, it straightens out and turns a little bit more to the right, looks in my direction, and I don't move at all. I just sit still. I think, well, it doesn't know I'm there, and I'm behind its right shoulder, and it turns a little bit more to the right, and it starts picking the huckleberries, snap off the twigs, suck them off the twig, the berries and the leaves, and there's that same sucking sound that I'd heard before, and it drops those twigs right straight down. So I go, okay, this is eating. And as I'm watching it, it turns a little bit more to the right, and it flips its eyes towards me, but a little above me, and I just look down. I go, is it looking at me? And it looks away, and I look at it, and it looks back, and I look down. And we do this about 5 or 6 times, and I figured, does it see me? If I'd have looked just past it, I'd have found the answer to that question. So it turns a little bit more, and it's feeding, and then it turns and looks in my direction again. I don't look at it. I just sit still. And then I go, I think it knows I'm here. And I remembered what Jane Goodall in her studies with chimps said, act like you're part of what's going on. So I start picking huckleberries and eating them, and I look over, and there's the eyeballs looking right at me, and it kind of looks at me, and it reaches over, and it picks a twig of huckleberries, does the suck them off bit, and drops it. And I kind of look at it and smile. And I'm tired, and it stretches and yawns. And when it yawns, like I said, I'm 8 to 10 feet off to its side. It opens its mouth, and I'm looking full into its mouth. I can see its teeth. It has a tongue like ours. Its teeth are like ours. They're bigger. No big, long canines, and it yawns. And I try to cover my face and not yawn, and I yawn at it. And I go, oh, no. Dianne Feinstein says in her studies of mountain gorillas, showing your teeth is a sign of aggression. I go, oops, I don't want to do that. I look down, and I cover my face, and I yawn again, and I slip my eyes to the left, and there she is. She's yawning, covering her mouth and looking at me, and I go, oh my gosh, she knows I'm there, and she's looking at me, and she's mimicking what I'm doing. And she sits up, and I sit up, and I can see it's a female. It's got breasts, blonde, brown color formation, and she turned a little bit more, and she's sitting kind of on the side, and she's eating, and so I'm eating, and she'd look at me, and I'd look at her. And all of a sudden, she kind of straightens up. She rolls her eyes up, and she looks behind me, and she bares her teeth in like a grimace. And I go, uh-oh, is she telling me I'm too close or something? I just look down, and I turn, and I look to the right behind me, and across the road on the edge of the brush, there's this big black form, like it's sitting there like a stump, and I should have paid attention to it. The male had walked up the hill, turned around, and come back down and sat down behind me. And he was there all the time watching me. I found out when I did some tracking later. So I'm watching her, and she goes back to feeding, and she comes up with her left hand to her mouth, and she puts a bunch of chewed berries and leaves in her left palm, and she reaches out towards these 3 clumps of that has like a little stump in it off to her left. My eyes are right on that hand. I'm watching that hand, and as it gets towards the clump, that little stump goes over into all 4, and the hand comes out, and it takes the berries and the chewed leaves from the mom's hand and pops it in its mouth, and I go, aha, that's a toddler, but it's not the same one that I saw. And so I'm watching it, and she does this a couple times, and I'm just sitting there, and I decide I'm going to sit still and watch. Where did the other one go? Because this little one is not the same one that I saw. It was just a little further over. And so I'm watching it, and I sit there, and I take my left hand, and I put it down on my left knee next to the bush. And all of a sudden, this little doll-like face with golf ball-sized eyes, a little bit of hair on its face, like a crew cut, black. You could see the skin color on its belly, and it's under its arm, kind of like a natural tan deer, and a pasty white. It's looking right at me and smiling, and it takes its right hand and puts it on the bush to the right of it, and I go, it's watching me. And so it pulls it back, and I pull mine back, and then it takes its left one, puts it over on the brush, and then looks at me, and I take my left hand, and I do the same back at it. It gets excited, man. You can see the excitement. And we start doing this, and it sticks its left foot out the one side of the bush. I stick my left foot out. It sticks its right foot out. I stick my right foot out. And I'm about ready to die. I'm playing with whatever this is. And we're mimicking each other back and forth, back and forth. And I bent down behind the bush. I'm going to look up, and it drops down behind the bush. And I look out of the corner of my eye, and the mom does the exact same thing. And I'm going, are they mimicking me? Are they playing with me? But occasionally she would do the same thing. So it comes up, he does that, and the sun's getting a little brighter, and I got my hat, so I go down and I put my hand over the brim of the hat, baseball hat, and I look up and I look across. He comes up and he's doing the exact same thing. And I'm trying not to laugh. I am so excited. This little one and I are playing back and forth. And it ducks back down. I duck down. Mom ducks down. And I raise up and I point at it. He raises up and points back at me. I'm going, this is interesting. So I decided, well, maybe I can talk to it. So I very quietly, when it comes up, and I point at it, and it points at me. And I go very softly, I see you. And the mom sitting right, she whirls around towards me, throwing dust and dirt, and backs up. And I go, I scared her. I never thought, it dawned on me that it probably has never heard a human speak that close. I think because of my appearance, she thought I was another juvenile Bigfoot. And she backs up, and the little guy drops on all fours, and it lets out a whimper. And he later puts out its hand, palm up towards its mom, and I go, I saw that before. And again, watching Jane Goodall and the Chimps and Diane Fossey. The mom reaches out with her left hand, and she takes its hand, and there's some communication back and forth, more like grunts. And I take a deep breath, and I say, I'm going to try this. The minute she looks back, I reach my hand out towards her, palm up, the same thing as I see the baby, and I'm going to hold still. I'm not going to make eye contact with her. She comes up to me on all six. She's on her feet, her knees, and her hands coming towards me, and they have a metatarsal break in their foot, or joint, whatever you want to call it. And I could see the front part of her foot is flat on the ground, but the back part and the heel is up off the ground. There's that flex, there's that joint. And she comes over, and I still have my hand out, and I'm thinking to myself, is this a wise idea? She could grab me and throw me in the lake from here. She reaches over, and she takes my hand in hers. Now, my hand is 5 inches wide and 9 inches long, and my palm of my hand fits between the knuckle of her thumb and the first finger joint. And her fingers could wrap around and touch the back of my wrist. And I go, okay. She holds my hand, and I look at her and I go, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. And I take my hand slowly and just put it on my lap. And she's looking at me like, how did you know to do that? She has this calm, surprised look. And she backs up and sits down. I just hold still, and I'm watching her. And she reaches out, and the stump is next to my left foot. She taps on it 3 times. And I go, I think she wants my attention. And I reach down and I tap it 3 times back at her. And she comes up on all fours, and she looks me right in the face. And I look her right in the face, and I figure I'm looking at a prehistoric human, not a giant wood ape. This is more human looking, even though it has ape-like behavior and features. This is a human. It's a prehistoric ancestor. It doesn't smell bad. It has a very expressive face, and she's looking me right in the face. And I look at her, and I talk to her again. I say again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to frighten you. And I figure she's going to leave, and she sits down almost next to me. And I'm 19 years old, and I am just about ready to burst with excitement. Here's this animal that people say does not exist. It's sitting within arm's length of me. There's a toddler 12 feet away from me, and it's playing with me. And I am really trying to stay calm, not jump out of my skin with excitement, because I am here having an up-close and personal encounter with a mother Sasquatch and a toddler. And she sits down and watches me, and she starts feeding, and I start feeding, and all of a sudden, the brush with a little one, he grabs hold of the bush, and he goes, "Arr!" and shakes it at me, and I grab the bush, and I go, "Arr!" back at him. And we start doing this playing back and forth, arm, leg, push this way, up, down. And the mom sit there, and she kind of looks over at me and rolls her eyes and looks at the little one and rolls her eyes. And I look at her and go, you obnoxious big sister. And we just keep playing like this. And finally, I get tired. And I said, well, maybe I should let them go. And I put my arm on my elbow on my knee and my hand in my chin. The little one does the same thing, and the mom does the same thing. And she turns from the waist, and she shows me her backside, and she crawls away from me. And I figure, okay, she's going to go. And she reaches out, and she pulls up the youngster, and she goes over the bank behind this tree. And I figure she's going to put this tree behind me and go down, or she's going to cut to the right. And as she goes over, all of a sudden she comes up. Well, she stood up to walk. And as she stands up against my even with the tree, here comes the blonde head and shoulders across. And I go, there's the other one. It was just over the hill from where it crosses over and joins the mom, and they disappear behind the tree. When they disappear behind the tree, I move down on like all fours, and I shoot about 20 feet to my right, because there's where the trail's intersecting. One comes up the road, and I get over there to the edge, and I kneel down. And as I kneel down, it's grinding pine cones and dirt. And I go, they threw something, or I knocked something loose. And I turned and looked to my left, and about 15 feet away, 5 foot tall, female, blonde, brown, is a juvenile female, Bigfoot. And she has this look like a bashful little girl, like, oop, you saw me. And I just look at her, and about this time, off to my right, I hear, crash goes a tree, and I turn and I look to my right, and I go, distraction, and I see it. I turn back to the left, and the juvenile, she whirls around and takes off running full tilt down the hill. And I look over, and the male, he goes up the bank into the woods, and I go, why did he do that? He's been watching me. I didn't realize, but there were 4 other people, the other people that verified they saw him and the female coming up, and he saw them. I guess there were too many people around, because I was well within its comfort zone of the mother, the toddler, and the other one. And so I turn and I look, and this blonde brown streak comes firing off the corner, running through. There's a group of Douglas fir saplings. They're about 10, 12 foot tall, and she goes through them like a D8 cat, man. She goes right through them, and she's jumping and stepping over logs and stumps and logs that we'd have to jump over, and she goes down about 65 yards or 70 yards below me and stands still and turns up and looking at me. She has that sloped-like appearance and she's standing there looking at me, and I go, okay, and I watch the juvenile run around and go behind the mom, and I'm looking, where's the toddler? Where's the baby? And I go, did I scare him? Did she lose the baby? And I'm looking around. I looked the area that she ran, where the other one ran, and I couldn't see nothing. And she makes a vocalization. I can't hear it, but I feel like a vibration on me. That's that low infrasound, line of sight. And so I look at her, and she's looking in my direction, but I'm trying to see. It's like she's looking below me. And so I come up to the edge, and I look down 10 feet below me, about 2 feet away. There's some huckleberries, and I see this little butt in the fetal position sticking out from behind it. There's the toddler. It's on the ground, and I look at it, and I kneel down, and I say, very soft to it, I can see you. And it jumps up and stands up, and it's looking to my right across in the direction of the male. It sighs, and it's looking around. And I go, it's looking for its mom, but it's looking at me at the other, and its mom is straight down below it. So I take my hand, I put my hand up, and it watches my hand, and I make like a pointer, and I point really slowly down at its mom. It pulls its hand up, it makes it like a pointer, it turns from the waist, it points, and sees its mom, it whips around, and it has this big expression on its face like, you found my mommy. And I'm chuckling. I go, hey, I didn't scare you. That was your dad or whoever that was that threw down the tree and growled. And it looks at me, but then it kind of got its nerve was too much, and it takes off running down the hill, and there's a log about 20 feet in front of it. It's about 5 foot in the stump, and it hits it with its left hand, and it vaults it, and it comes up. Its feet are apart. And he'd running down that hill. Sometimes he would swing on a branch. It could teach Marshawn Lynch broken field running. It goes down, and it stops by the mom. And I hear the vocalizations again, and it's got its arms up, and the mom touches it, and I can read that body language. Mom, pick me up. Mom doesn't pick it up. And it's there, and I'm watching it. And like a toddler holds onto its mom's dress or pant leg, it does that, and it steps in behind it. It's mom, and she's standing there left profile, and it's to her in front of her, but walking, it's behind him. And I keep watching, and pretty soon it, like you do a tree peek, it peeks out from behind its mom, and I point at it and I go, I can see you. And it pops back up, and I hear some more vocalizations, and all of a sudden she turns and he turns, and he points up the hill at me, and I hear a definite 4-syllable vocalization. And I discussed it with Scott Taylor, who talks to Dr. Johnson, the linguist, and according to what they told me, the Native American, what the vocalization basically meant was, and so it is, or so it you do, I see you, and it was answering back. And so it turns, and the mom, and it starts walking down the bank towards the woods. And I got my right arm at my side, and I just raise my arm, and I wave at it, at the two of them. And he's looking back, and like a toddler would wave at you, it waves back at me, and it disappears over the bank. And I go, all right, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to walk over to where that tree got thrown down and see what I can do. And I walk over there, and this tree, it was dead snag, is thrown down, and it split almost like a 25-foot tall spear. It's on the ground. And as I walk back towards where the stump would be, it smells like somebody turned an outhouse over. And I walk a little bit farther, and there on the ground is 2 piles of fresh steaming poop. And then on one side of the water drainage on the side of the road is a footprint. On the other side is another footprint the size of like a football, bigger. The male who had been sitting behind me all the time, he got up, he threw down that tree. I think that was a warning. And I looked to see what he was looking at from that position. I could see where I was sitting. And as I'm looking over the bank, I see the tops of the heads of 4 people coming up. He had seen them and did that warning bark for the family. And I talked to them as we walked back to camp, and they said they saw him go up the hill to their left, my right. And the daughter said she saw 1 or 2 that were like a light brown color go the other way. They go, yeah, that's with the other ones. So we walked out, and I told them what I'd seen, and I got back to where I camped, and my friends go, what did you see? I said, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. But I eventually did tell them. And that is, and I have that written indeed, that's the one sighting that I get the most questions about. Because like the first one and the other sightings, those were all first-time encounters with a Bigfoot. The later ones I would have in eastern Washington are with a family of Bigfoot that is camped, that live in the area that we camp at.
Lynn, this is absolutely incredible. It's probably one of the most incredible accounts that I've ever heard. We had talked about those pages you have written. You have got to make this into a book so it's not lost to time eventually.
No, it took me a while to get all my notes. It took me a while to get all my notes back together. I don't type. It's all handwritten. They're all very descriptive of what I've seen. I have drawings and pictures of glyphs. Wow. And they do communicate with you and with others. with glyphs. And also, they make the wood structures. Glyphs, some are for you. Ones that they leave for you, you'll know it. Others are between them. Some are art. Some are like a map. Tom Cantrell says I shouldn't be able to read them, except for general ones, but I've had the ability since I've had that contact with them.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like I'm reading something and it'll jump up off the page. I know what that means. And it comes from the interacting with the Bigfoot. They choose who they will be friends with. They choose who they will show themselves with. Most people that are out in the woods to see a Bigfoot, the first thing they do is point at, scream, yell, point a gun. Oh, they're gone. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about a habituated Bigfoot or a non-habituated Bigfoot? I've seen both. Glassing across a canyon, I see this black form by a rock. Okay, I put the glasses on it. It's an animal sitting there. I crank it up. I get a little reflection off my thing. It turns and looks at me and stands up. It was over a mile away looking at me, and I was looking at it. Mm-hmm. That was an not a habituated Bigfoot. They're very, very elusive. They'll see you before, and they're generally gone. The ones that most people have encounters with are habituated people. Being habituated to people has both positive and negative consequences. You got to leave your fear at home. If you show fear, you're going to get a negative response from them. I, for the most part, have just been either sitting down or stopped walking and then seen them. One in the Eastern Washington family that I interact with, the one juvenile, he used to walk along and follow me walking through the woods. Every now and then he'd peek out at me where I could see him. And when I walk in the area and I become aware that he was there, in a very calm, quiet voice, I would say, "Come walk with me." And after a while, he would step out and see me. And I would walk along and I would say, "Hey, company, are you there? I've got company again." And I was walking out, and eventually he walked up next to me. And that was a lifetime thing. I was going to try and take his picture. I took my phone out, turned it on, put my hands in front of my body and turned to it, and then I realized, no, that's a defensive thing. In their body language, that means go away. He backed straight up away from me. And a lot of people if you see one, you got to learn their body language. You see pictures of people describe a Bigfoot, it brings its hands up in front of it and kind of like push away, and then it turns, that's go away, or I'm going to leave. Okay. That's that body language. They reach out, a palm up, like a mother does a baby. That's a greeting. That's a comfort thing. Wood knocks are a form of communication. Rock clacks are a form of communication. Sometimes you can get away with imitating what they do. Like I shake a bush, you shake a bush back at them. But you got to keep your personal security and responsibility, because as one friend of mine found out up there, he heard a Bigfoot banging rocks back and forth, and he started banging the rocks and the same thing. Well, I guess in Bigfoot culture, he just challenged the big dominant male. And he said, like in the King Kong movie, he said he came down that hill towards him, and he said, I got on my quad and I was out of there before he got there. You hear that wah, like a bark. That's a communication that a male will do. You hear like squirrel chatter. That's generally between a mother and juvenile. I've been up at night and I put some beans and stuff out on the rock, and I kept hearing like turkey calls. Puck, 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 puck. Turkeys don't puck at night. Turkeys are in the tree. And I got up and went over there in the morning. I went over there. All the beans were gone. There was no feathers. There was no poop, but a lot of the brush had been pressed down. Okay. And it's like, yeah, they were there. There's lots of pros and cons about gifting and leaving food for them. I leave food gifts for them. Some they'll take, some they won't.
Lynn, I could talk to you for absolute hours. I would love to continue this conversation on a later date if possible.
That's possible. Yeah,
Okay.
no problem. I'll be gone. I'll be gone in October from like the 10th to the 22nd, because that's when I go over hunting, and that's when I go over and do some work and research with the Bigfoot family that's over there.
We definitely need to continue this. I feel you have probably some of the most detailed information I've ever heard, but thank you so much for sharing what you've learned so far, and I look forward to chatting with you at a future date as well, Lynn.
Okay. I had fun. It's all to help you and others understand Bigfoot.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.
You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.